Good morning and welcome, Patriot Radio News Hour. Joe and Jason on this Friday. Yeah, we've made it through another week in the year of chaos that has been 2024. Our toll-free number, 800-951-0592. The website at allamericangold.com. And, of course, wealth insurance. It's what we do, the physical delivery of it. Gold and silver. And, man, has never, I don't think ever, has there been a time where you needed to have more of it. We've got a great show lined up for you. I will say this, more rule changes coming. This is what they do. When it comes to the money that's in your bank, I'm going to break it down for you. I'm going to tell you, hey, here's where the rules sit. And then we'll come July of next year, more rules coming out. They're not going to tell you about it. I'm sure it'll show up in the fine print in some electronic statement of some sort. But the money that's in your bank, how is it going to work with the new Dodd-Frank's not that new anymore, but the too big to fail banks, and it's going to be something you're not going to want to miss. Stay tuned for that. We got the PPI today. Yesterday we had CPI. Today PPI. This is the Producer Price Index. Inflation flat for the month. Up 1/10 year over year. And again, fuel. The big savings there. We'll see how long that can continue. And then we had bank earnings out. Jamie Dimon with another warning. We had Wells Fargo, JP Morgan with earnings out better than expectations, but profits down. A matter of fact, like Wells Fargo, I think profits were down 11%. JP Morgan a little bit better than that. But overall, I would say very, very average at best when we look at the earnings that came out of the banks this morning. Consumer confidence came out. That was also worse than expected. The consumer saying, hey, inflation, it's still here and it's still hurting. And, I think that's, again, when they're admitting to, 2%, 3%, whatever it may be, you got to double it because that's really what it is. So when you're talking about inflation at 5 or 6%, no wonder why when the consumer survey came out today that people were like, hey, I don't know what Jay Powell and his buddies at the Fed are saying. We've got inflation, and it's still here, and it's still getting worse. That is all the things that came out today. But like I said, we're going to focus on the regulations of what it means to have money in the bank. How is it going to work? What is going to happen when the next banking crisis occurs? We're going to cover all of that for you today. And as you know, right now, you're an unsecured creditor. I'm an unsecured creditor. When you put your money in the bank, and and if you've done it lately, right, you click OK, you sign here, initial there, click OK, sign here, initial there. Essentially, you're giving the bank the legal authority to be the owner of your money. That's how the banks get to loan it out, right? They can't loan out money that isn't theirs. So that's how they do it. And we become an unsecured creditor. Let me ask you, are you getting a lot of questions at your bank lately? Yesterday, I was meeting a friend. We're going to have lunch together, have a few cocktails together, and I was sitting there, and this group next to us, they're just talking. And this guy was saying how he went to his bank, withdrew cash. He said, I was going to buy this car. And they were giving me a ton of crap. And he goes, the funny part was, it wasn't like it was a lot of money. I want to say it was like $7,500. It was a little under that, like $7,250. But in any event, he's like, yeah, they just gave me a ton of crap about why do I need it? What am I using it for? And he's like, yeah, I'm buying a car. Well, apparently he went to go buy the car, and he didn't like it. Right? And when it came down to do the deal, he was like, nah, I'm not going to buy this car. And then he says, I go back, and this is like 3 days later, to put the money back in. And he's like, and they gave me a bunch of crap about putting it back in, wanting to know where I got the money from. And he goes, here's the funny thing. It was still in the envelope they gave it to me, and the money, they strap it, had their straps on it and everything. He's like, what are you talking about? I got it from you. I got it from you. Well, we got to make sure, you can't do anything nefarious. I mean, do they really think somebody would be like, yeah, I'm going to put this cash in there? Like, oh, well, where did you get it? Well, I just sold a bunch of drugs. Yeah, I just sold a bunch of cocaine, and I'm going to put this cash in the bank. You really think people that's what they're going to say? Oh, I got it from a terrorist. Come on, man. Funny part was, his buddy starts talking about how his bank was holding cashier's checks. Yeah. Things are getting weird. We'll be back right after the break. We're back here, the half-empty cup, Joe and Jason on this Friday. A quick look in at the markets. The Dow's up 300. The S&P's up 30. The Nasdaq's up 50. The 10-year note got as high as 412. They finally got their act together. So remember, we had a disaster, what was it, on Tuesday with the 3-year notes. The foreigners didn't come. Then on Wednesday, right, you know what happens, right? The Janet Yellen got on the horn, Jay Powell got on, what are you guys doing? Come on, man. So they showed up at the 10-year auction. Problem was they put bids in, but way above what our government wanted to pay, the big tail. Right, so apparently that wasn't good enough. Yesterday, finally, they had a 30-year auction. They had the foreigners show up, and there wasn't a tail. So they finally got it right. But of course, it was the smallest auction. It was a 30-year auction. But the 10-year note got all the way up to 412. Right now, 409. On the 10-year note. We'll see what next week brings. You can only do that so often. Right now, gold is on the tear. We told you. I got a great deal for you again today. But up another 27. And, of course, if you're looking on TV, gold's up, I don't know, $37, something like that. But I'm going to tell you 27, 26.58. And rising. Silver, another one, I keep telling you, all out buys here on silver. Silver's up another 45 cents. So what are we looking at for gold and silver? Just to let you know, $26.70 and $32. So $26.70 on gold, $32 on silver. If we close above those, right, then we're probably looking at the next leg here. So we got a little bit of room here, but not much. A little bit of room here, but not much when we're looking at that. We keep telling you to be more diversified. Be careful with your money in the bank. I'm just telling you right now, be careful with your money in the bank. We're going to break down how it works, and then remember, in July of next year, even more regulations coming. Money markets, right? We got new rules coming into effect right now. Yep. The old safe money market's not so safe anymore. Well, they're safe as long as everything's good, right? Then they're safe. But when there's a problem, not so much. So we're going to go over all of that today, but check out our friends over at YRefi. Up to 10.25% fixed rates of return. Not correlated to the stock market. What does fixed rate mean? That means it doesn't change. What if this and what if that? And you think about a lot of you like, hey, I'm going to do the old, like the annuities and things like that. It's hard to get that type of return. Plus, there's all these penalties, right? There's all these obligations. Oh, if you take it early, you get hit with this, and you can't do that. You got to do this. YRefi doesn't do any of that stuff. No attack on principal, no fees, no games. Check them out. InvestYRefi.com. That's the word invest, the letter Y, REFY.com. Or just call them at 888-YRefi24, 888-973-3924. Now, having said all that, first, we're going to play a clip. This is from the FDIC. This was several years ago. They had a big meeting. All of the important people were there. They also had high-powered attorneys that represented all the major financial institutions present. And they were talking about what should we tell the depositors? What should we tell the depositors exactly what the rules are? Right? So should we tell them? This is their debate. They're debating whether or not they should let us know what the real rules are about the money in their bank accounts. Jack, when you're ready, let's play the clip.
As the FDIC even admitted.
Time. And so people are sort of less and less interested in getting into the nitty-gritty and some of the really interesting developments. So I would think your strategy ought to be to disclose as much as possible to people who professionally need to know about it. And that would certainly include the ratings agencies and the people within the banks who are responsible for these judgments. And simply have publicly available a place where people can go if they need to know more. Because we're dealing with a society where people are getting their information in tweets. There's just no patience, I think, for going through the elaborate and careful planning that has gone on. It should be there. It should be accessible when people need to know. But I don't think you have much hope of reaching a public that doesn't have a professional need to know.
I completely agree with that. I almost think you'd scare the public if you put this out. Like, why are they telling me this? Should I be concerned about my bank? Like, my insurance company doesn't tell me what they're doing with my assets. They just assume they're going to pay my claim. Right? I think you've got to think of the unintended consequences of taking a public that has more full faith and confidence in the banking system than maybe people in this room do. That we want them to have full faith and confidence in the banking system. They know the FDIC insurance is there. They know it works. They put their money in. They're going to get their money out. So there's a select crowd of people that are in the institutional side. And if they want to understand this, they're going to find a way to understand this. There's a bunch of law firms represented in this room. There's a bunch of people that will charge them by the hour a lot of money to explain this all to them. And it's fine. I don't have a problem with that. And they all have huge staffs. But I would be careful about the unintended consequences of starting to blast too much of this out in the general public.
But let me show you.
So there you have it. This was what they decided. Oh, guys, the unintended consequences of telling people. We shouldn't do that, right? Because they'll be, did you hear, why are they telling us this? Should I be worried about my money in my bank account? And, of course, the answer is yes. Yes, Yes, you should be. We don't want to tell them that. The FDIC insurance, it works. They believe it works anyway. And besides, for all the institutional guys, all the rich guys, we've got all the information for them. And they've got their high-powered attorneys. They're going to be fine. They know how it works. But we don't need to tell the public how it works. So this is something where, and again, did you see them they even kind of snickered, right? They kind of laughed. Oh, I mean, the one guy just insulted everybody. Hey, these guys, because you heard what he said about, they get their information from tweets. Insinuating we're too stupid to know. It's too complicated. Oh, my gosh, it's too complicated. They won't understand it. And, of course, they'll have to read stuff. Right? It's not going to be LOL and OMG and all this, They won't be able to figure it out anyway. So let's not tell them. So guess what today? I'm going to tell you. Very simply how it works. You go to the financial crisis that we had last time. Here's how it's going to go down. They've already done it with the Bank of International Settlements, with the FDIC, with the central bank. It's already done. This is how they're going to recapitalize. So you're going to have Bank A going under. What happens with Bank A going under is the FDIC will come in, seize all the assets of the bank. Again, your deposits are an asset of the bank. They'll take all the good stuff, leave all the bad stuff, and essentially create a new bank. But they got to pay the bad stuff. So what they're going to do is immediately anybody that has over $250,000 in a bank, and please remember, I've got $100,000 in my checking account, and I've got $300,000 in my savings account. Those get added together, right? Or, I got $100,000 in my checking and $200,000 in my savings. Those are two separate accounts. Nope, they're the same. This account's in my name and this one's in my husband's name. Nope. They add it all to get all the accounts you have at the bank. So be diversified in your banking. That's important. But immediately, anything over $250,000 is going to be taken. They have the option of issuing you shares of a new bank. You won't. What's that worth? Nothing. Maybe in the future you could sell it. But here's where it gets real tricky. See, because as we've explained, the FDIC doesn't have any money. So, and I say any, they got like $120 billion. That's all they have. It's not enough. I mean, could it cover Joe Schmuckatelli Bank? Sure. Listen, they couldn't even cover Silicon Valley Bank, period. They couldn't do it. But then they're going to go in and start looking at the other money, the people that have $200,000, maybe $250,000, maybe you're right at the insurance level. They actually have the right to tell you you can't have it. Sorry. I want my money. No. I want to go and buy gold with it right now. No.
Lynette Zhang, that clip that you played was off of one of her clips. Just yesterday, this is real quick, 63 central banks are implementing Basel III, which includes the widespread practice of bail-ins to rescue failing banks. And she just reported that yesterday, so you're right on you're right on track with what people are looking at.
Yeah, and this is something where people don't understand that. Now, it can go further. They can determine, well, the problem was a little bit bigger than we thought. We didn't have enough uninsured deposit money. So now we've got to go and look at the quote-unquote insured money. And they can essentially say, hey, tell you what, you've had $200,000 in this bank for like 5 years now, 10 years, whatever it may be. You obviously don't need it right now. We're just going to borrow some of that. But don't worry, you're going to get these shares. Yeah, see, these shares in this bank, this new bank. Can't do anything with them yet, but, sometime later, maybe. And, oh, by the way, but I want to buy gold right now. No. I want to take my money out. No. 800-951-0592. Gold's up $29 now. $26.60. Silver's up 45 cents here. 31.55 as we can wrap up this Friday, but we're talking about your money. It's set through the banking system, the Bank of International Settlements, how they're going to create these new banks. By the way, more rules coming next year in July. And we can just imagine what they're going to be, right? Remember with your money markets now. Same thing. I want to cash out of my money market. No. Well, actually, they got a couple of options. They can put a fee on you. Well, how big of a fee? Whatever they want. Yeah, that's the rule. I want my money. Okay, well, we're going to hit you at a 10% fee. Do you still want your money? And if enough people say yes, guess what they're going to do? Well, how about 20%, 25%, right? They'll set the fee high enough. But once it gets too out of control, they'll be like, okay, forget it. Nobody can have their money. Nope. Can't take it out. But I want to protect myself. Nope. Now, starting now, if it breaks the buck, which remember that happened in the financial crisis. Simply put, A, they don't let you have your money. And then B, they just take whatever they need. And if they need 10% of your money, they take it. And that's legal. Yeah. Hey, maybe you had $100,000 in a money market account. Well, you know what? We broke the buck and we're 10% short. So everybody that's got money in this money market, we're just going to take 10% of your money. Period. And guess what? If they break the buck again, they take more. These are the rules. They know they're the rules. You heard the clip. Hey, we got all the lawyers in here. All the people that need to know. It's all available for them. But let's not tell the consumer that that's what wouldn't it be great if CNBC came out and told you all this stuff? Get Jim Cramer out there to tell you. He ain't telling you. I'll tell you. I'll tell you. And the sad part is the no part, right? That's the most frustrating part. Same thing with your stocks. Hey, I'm going to sell my stocks, go to the sideline. You think no, you're not. Not if they say it's an emergency. Right? You're going to have to take all the losses along with the rest of us. and preventing people from, and this is the thing, Jason, I think this is what really is hard for most people to hear. Because when I sit there and tell you, they will tell you no. People don't want to believe that will happen. They really don't, right? That's the problem. I don't want to believe that. And I'm going to go in there and I'm going to talk to the teller at the bank. You think the bank teller knows? No, you heard them. You heard the FDIC. What did they say? They didn't say, let's tell all the employees at the bank. No. We're just going to make sure the lawyers know. And the quote-unquote important people. They'll know. Nobody else needs to know. But that's the hard part, right? People don't want to believe that really is what happened. Not only it started with Dodd-Frank, but every 2 or 3 years, they make it worse. And they're getting ready to do it again, Jason.
You know, I remember just a couple years ago with COVID and the shutdowns and all the craziness, and China was just shutting off people's accounts. Joe, remember this? They were just shutting them off. And then these people would get into lines at their banks. These lines would go for a day or 2 days. And so that you can go into the bank and they can shame you for whatever reason. They shut you off on your cell phone, your account. You go through a shaming process. They tell you why you're such a bad person. And then they click you back on after waiting in line for a day. You know, people don't think it's, well, it's China. Well, their monetary system works pretty well with ours right now. We do a lot of trade. There's a lot of business and money passing back and forth between those countries. When the banking system freezes up, when credit freezes up, and then the system needs to fix itself, they will do anything they need to fix themselves. And your amount at your checking account, right, Joe? It'll be frozen if it needs to be frozen. It's just that simple. If anyone who doesn't think that this is possible, you really need to just look around, read some things. It's right there. It's right there in front of you. The clip that you played, Joe, is the clip to play. You get one of these guys who are actually saying this in front of a camera, accidentally or not, saying, you know, we don't really want the people to know how fragile it is. We all know how fragile it is. We just don't want them to know it because they might beat us to getting their money first, right? They don't want all you guys getting your money taken care of before they get theirs taken care of, Joe. It's a race. It's a race to the door when the theater's on fire, right?
Yeah. And again, remember, the yield curve is uninverted. Boy, we're seeing a steepening, aren't we? 10-year note at 4.1. What was it, 3.6 a month ago? The latest, you know, the quote-unquote good auction we had yesterday, do you know it was half a basis point higher in interest rates than it was last month? Yeah. Yeah, that's huge. But now it gets worse. There's a guy at Bank of America. His name is Mark Cabana. He is the guy that originally wrote to the Fed in early 2019 when they were doing quantitative tightening at the time. Remember, interest rates, they raised it, they got to like 2%, and then they had to go right back to zero. He wrote to the Fed and said, guys, what are you doing? There's going to be a huge problem before the end of the year. And, of course, remember, we had the taper tantrum, remember, right? It came to an end. The Fed had to do the emergency lending facilities, right? Well, we'll start with 20. They try to minimize. We'll start with $25 billion. And then 2 days later, $50 billion. A day after that, $100 billion, right? The thing just went crazy out of control. Wait till you see what he wrote the other day, talking about where the next meltdown is going to be. We got that coming up next. 800-951-0592, Patriot Radio News Hour, Joe and Jason on this Friday. Today we've got another great special for you. We've got $10 Liberties. We got about 75 $10 Liberties. These are the half ounce, private, buy, sell, trade, not considered bullion. Lynette Zhang was talking about gold confiscation again, by the way. I hope she's wrong. But this is why you want the pre-33, $14.25. So that's a $35 savings. But gold keeps going up. So really, we're probably looking at somewhere Monday morning. If gold closes here, a $10 Liberty, probably, $14.75, $14.85. Today, you get them at $14.25. Put them away. $1,425 at 800-951-0592. Get your money out of the banking system. You got to have enough in there to function. Boy, you don't want to have more than what you need. So now, Bank of America, Mark Cuban, and another warning. I'm going to give you a new term that you're going to need to know. It's called the LCLOR. I know, right? The LCLOR. That is the lowest comfortable level of reserves. When the LCLOR, the lowest comfortable level of reserves, when you go below that, the market freezes up. That's what happened in 2019. That's what happened in the financial crisis, right? That's when the Fed starts all its emergency lending facilities. Cubana says it's going to happen again. And he's looking at that reverse repo facility. Remember, we've talked about the reverse repo facility a bunch of times. And Cabana is saying, hey, listen, it's out of money. They've got less than $300 billion and mostly just window dressing. And the talking about the deposits and the assets right now sitting at $3.09 trillion. That's cash, collateral, and dealer sheet capacity. Already, Cabana says that the collateral and dealer sheet capacity is at critical levels. And of course, we know what's going on in these treasury auctions. It's a problem. We know what's going on in the commercial real estate areas. It's a problem. We know what's going on with delinquencies, with credit cards and auto loans. It's a problem. But now he's saying the cash is getting ready to go. And that this is very similar setup to when he wrote in 2019, because he's saying that as soon as reserve slips below the $3 trillion level, we're going to have a big problem. And right now he's saying they're only at 3.09. Last time he did something like this, I want to say it was April or May of 2019. By September, we had the panic. And I don't know, a lot of people forget about it because then here came COVID, like all together. And this kind of sets up, doesn't it? That time frame sets up with this yield curve, an inverting. Remember, I told you, it's 90 to 180 days, 3 to 6 months is usually when this happens. Now he's out with this note. And 3 to 4 months later, we were in that situation, and he's very worried about the need for the Treasury Department to reload their checkbook. They're going to have to refund somewhere between the end of the year and, let's say, inauguration, somewhere in that time frame. How much? Somewhere in the neighborhood of $125 to $150 billion, which, of course, think about this. 3.09, that's like $90 billion. Well, that's going to be more than $90 billion. You see where it's going. And then, of course, the need after the refunding to what? We got to increase auction sizes, right? Which further drains when we look at what he calls dealer sheet capacity. Because what's been happening at these auctions, the dealers have to buy it. Because otherwise, the market won't function right. The tails get too long and we've got a problem. That's what he's talking about. Be smart. Take a real hard look at what you have sitting in your bank accounts and your money market accounts, because believe me, when it does happen, it happens so fast. And then they're going to start locking you out of your own money and then, quote unquote, borrowing some. 800-951-0592. Final segment. Final segment here, $10 liberties. Buy as many as you can. That's my advice to you. $1,425. This is pretty much now you're saving $50 a piece here as gold continues to threaten again now new all-time record highs as well. Here's the realities. Because I know a lot of you are like, oh, come on, Joe, but the stock market's at a record high. Right? If this was going to happen, then they'd be in trouble. You know when stock market was at a record high? Right before Lehman went under. Literally. Right next. I mean, they were at a record high a month before Lehman Brothers went under. They were almost at a record high when it went under. Listen, that's the last place to look. If you're waiting for that, you'll have waited too long. Don't wait. There's a reason why all these central banks are buying gold. Don't be naive. Don't be naive about it. We got the BRICS thing coming. We got the election coming. But as Cabana has pointed out, there's going to be another emergency in the debt markets, and it's easy to see. The banks are fully leveraged, and there's too much debt coming into the market. And again, I know, right, we know they made some phone calls, got the foreigners to at least for one auction show up. But we know the trend. You know the trend. I hope you're taking precautions. The rules are only getting worse. And guess what? They're getting why is it July of 2025 they're going to make it even more stringent about the money in your bank? Why do you think that is? Because they think that it's not going to happen? No, that's how dumb these guys are. Now they're, oh my gosh, wait a minute. We got to make these rules even stronger. Jason, the Dodd-Frank rules, they weren't enough. We got to make it even stronger so we can guarantee that we can recapitalize new banks and have the depositors and the bondholders of the banks, they're the ones that are going to get stuck paying it all. Bondholders will be totally wiped out.
The Dow's up about 14% this year, which is the best year it's had in the last 8, essentially. Not counting it bouncing off the COVID lows. and gold's up just under 30%, silver's up 30%. And if the market has stress later this year and next year, and it goes down or goes sideways, and gold and silver keep climbing, Joe, I mean, I've said this how many times, a price crash for housing, if your house is going up 1% a year and you say, oh, look, our house went up 1% this year, at least it went up, but the cost of living goes up 8%, your house just lost value. Right, Joe? Your house lost value, and so that's what to look. Yeah, the Dow's had a good year. Well, it's kind of coming off all this inflation, and they've so-called got the inflation numbers coming down. But what's going to happen? What's going to happen when this market really starts to squeeze? These banks get really squeezed. Warren Buffett's selling everything for a reason, isn't he?
Yeah. Guess what? How about J.P. Morgan? Had to have another $1 billion added to credit loss reserves. Yeah, it's fine. Don't worry. Pay no attention. It won't happen. Just in case it does, 800-951-0592.